Hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to the Baizhu post-release analysis. Here's the thing, I have not been playing as much Genshin recently, so I am sorry that this video is coming out a little bit late. Usually I try to put them out as early, when there's a reasonable amount of time left on the banner. Now I know as I'm recording this, there is about 8 days left, so by the time it comes out, it's gonna be between 5 and 7 probably. I am sorry about that, for those of you who were waiting for my post-release to decide on whether they wanted to roll or not, but it is coming out now, so that's that. So, as usual for the post-release, we go through the pre-release video, we look at what we got right, we look at what we got wrong, and yeah, that's basically it. So, hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to a banner review for the... That's the wrong video. So, first off, 13.3k base HP with HP % Ascension. Decently high base HP. His base attack is pretty low. His base defense is actually incredibly low. So if you look at characters' base defense, the lowest that we have right now in the game is Yelan. Even if you do build him HP, that doesn't necessarily mean that like he'll be able to tank, like face tank everything without taking damage. Like his ability to tank big hits will still not be like the most insane, but it's not that big of a deal because you're still gonna get more than enough HP from your build. He is a catalyst, so far so good, which means Dendro infused normal attacks. Woohoo, that's crazy, right? Well, yeah, it's nice, but as you can see from his normal attack animations, his range is very, very small. It's really small. The AoE on his normal attacks is really bad. If you're relying on it for Dendro application, it better not be an AoE situation because it's, yeah. I'm gonna be comparing him to Yao Yao a lot in this video because he's a Dendro healer. So in a lot of teams, if you want a Dendro healer, you'll be choosing between the two. Yao Yao's elemental skills healing is pretty bad, but her elemental burst healing is really, really good. Her downside is that you need to actually use your elemental burst, right? And you need to actually stay on her after you do. If you do though, the healing that you get is quite a lot more than what you'll get from Baizhu. That being said though, 8k-ish healing on your skill is generally going to be more than enough to keep your team healthy. Okay, one more thing that I want to add to this is the delay that happens between when you cast your skill and when the healing happens, because, right, if you read the description, after it performs 3 attacks, or if there are no opponents nearby, but if there's no opponents nearby, you're not taking damage, so it doesn't matter if it takes a little bit. So effectively, after it performs 3 attacks, the sprite will return healing all nearby party members. So the heal happens on return, not on cast. Now that's actually kind of a big deal because it's a pretty long time between the initial cast and the healing. It is somewhere, I mean, it depends on like how far the enemies are and all that, but it's generally like between 2 and 4 seconds basically. If you play around it, if you are aware of that, it's not too big of a deal, but it is something that like you need to keep in mind. It doesn't instantly heal you, so if you have a character that's low HP and you use that skill, you're gonna have to wait until you can swap to them without them being in danger of death. A good way to work around that is to try to always EQ rather than QE on Baizhu, because that makes it so that your ult animation goes into that 2 to 4 seconds that your E takes to heal you, so you have less time that you have to just wait around. But yeah. Now let's move on to the burst. Enters the pulsing clarity state, creating a seamless shield that absorbs Dendro damage with 250% effectiveness. While in this state, Baizhu will generate a new seamless shield every 2.5 seconds. His shield is trash. However, that does not mean that it's useless. The main upside that a small shield that can be generated often, which as we'll read in just a second, you can generate this shield pretty often, is that you'll spend a reasonable amount of time shielded. Now the thing is, when you have a shield, no matter how small it is, you basically are invulnerable to interruption. So if you look at Toma, right, I want to show you guys what happens with a shield like this. A shield that is small. I'm not going to use a skill just to make sure that the shield is small. And yeah, I'm taking damage. But I'm not getting interrupted. And that's what a small shield that gets refreshed often can do for you. Alright, Baizhu's shield refreshes less often than Toma's. In practice, when you're against one enemy, it's generally gonna have that effect. When you're against more than one enemy, very often, if you get hit, you're gonna get hit twice in a row. Against some enemies, a lot of their attacks have more than one hit, and you'll get hit by one of the two. I think I slightly overestimated the ability to to use this shield to prevent resistance to interruption. It hurts him more than it hurts someone like Toma because the delay between his shield generation is actually a decent amount longer, which is unfortunate. Especially in the current version of Abyss, which is with the Consecrated Beasts, which are very, very aggressive, have a bunch of multi-hits, and there's 2 of them. In general, it's not going to feel that bad, but against content like that, it's going to feel pretty shit. Anyways, let's keep going. Baizhu gains different effects according to the current HP of your active character. When their HP is like... The passives don't really... Or that first passive doesn't really matter. Reaction damage dealt by these characters by 2%, and the aggravate and spread reaction damage by 0.8%. The biggest thing about this is only to the active character that gets healed by his burst, so you can't expect to have it instantly when you swap into a character. It also seems to be an additive buff, meaning that it's not going to actually, like, if you're doing 20k without him and you increase it by 90%, you're not going to be doing like 38k. It's just going to add onto the EM multiplier that you already have. And by far the most important part of his kit, when Baizhu is in the party, interacting with certain harvestable items will heal your current active character for that is indeed the most important part of his kit. That definitely is. Cool. Okay, yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. It's kind of similar to Nahida's effect, which is obviously like pretty good, but Nahida's burst, like the EM buff that you get from it, in a lot of teams it's not actually that useful. So this, like, Baizhu has a very similar thing. The main downside that Baizhu has over Nahida with this passive is that Nahida can benefit from her own passive because she has a lot of EM scalings. If you're playing Baizhu in a Hyperbloom team, he doesn't benefit from his own passive at all, basically, because he's not gonna actually trigger any of the cores. And so a lot of the time it just is gonna have a bit less value in those kinds of teams. Whereas with Nahida, it's still a buff to her own personal damage. But yeah, it's still a fine buff. Yeah. So solo healing, resistance to interruption, all field single target, then drop, reaction buff. Yeah. Energy, quote unquote problems. Yeah, if you use them as solo dendro, you definitely can run into those. That being said, they're not that big of a deal. I think I do mention this here. They're not that big of a deal because you don't get punished that much for building him ER. He is very single target indeed, and reaction buff is only for the active character. Yep. Okay, cons. I mean, I'm not even gonna. I haven't done constellation testing. I don't really care about constellation testing, so I don't have anything to add that I didn't already say in the pre-release. Weapons. Not big. Technically, J-Full is better than the prototype Amber, but in terms of like how valuable they are to have, definitely better to stick to prototype Amber than his signature and then TTDS. Yeah, I think I stand by this. Just use Fav. Fav is so good. Playing Genshin without using Fav is like going to an Italian restaurant if you're on a keto diet. It's like, why? Why would you do that? like what are you gonna eat? But yeah, you can play Prototype Amber. If you don't have Fav, like, you can play Prototype Amber, it's fine. Fav is just so good. Hakushin Ring is overall not all that good, but there can be some teams, so if you end up playing him in quick swap, Quicken teams, right, something like EI Official, for example, where Hakushin Ring having low uptime if you don't swap back into him doesn't matter as much because you can swap back into it. So that's a situation where the weapon it can be fine in those kind of teams, but like even then, Fav is too good. Just play Fav. Make your life easy. Play Fav. No. Artifact stats. Artifact stats generally HP, ER HP, attack dendro crit, dendro crit. Yeah. I do think that generally you are gonna want to stick to either triple HP or like HP healing bonus. His scalings are just not that great. You can go attack dendro crit if you're driving on him, but you're not actually gaining that much from it. So it's like, sure, whatever, I guess. Why not? Cool, have fun. But if you need the survivability for more HP, then it's good to get. You can also always get healing bonus on the last one if you're playing him in teams where you don't need to like stack his passive because you don't have a character that can take advantage of it. So if you're playing him on field in a Hyperbloom team, very often you're not going to have good uptime on your passive on your Electro unit. So you can make an argument to just go for healing bonus instead. It's also more than fine to just go for a bunch of ER just to make your life easy. It is important that you get your ult up every rotation, so if you find yourself forgetting to reuse his E, you only get 1 E per rotation, or if you're playing him in a team where it's hard to get more than 1 E per rotation, going for ER sends is still fine. Artifact sets! Clam, no. Yes, he heals a lot with his E, so you're gonna max out 1 clam proc, but his burst doesn't... I think I'll talk more about it here. That can increase your clams a little bit. Now your first burst clam proc from Hakushin will generally not benefit from Hakushin, because generally you cast your E and your burst close together, which means that the first tick of Hakushin will happen in the same like clam window as your skill, which max out the clam itself. But yeah, overall you'll get somewhere around like 4k-ish DPS, which is not bad, but I guess it is like additional free damage if you don't need Deepwood and you don't need any of like the support sets. So that is something. Yeah, like the biggest issue that I have with this is that most of the time there's a better set. Clam is always an option that you can go for, but there's just so many teams where he has a better option. So going through the better options, right? 4B's Deepwood generally is his best set. When you play him in double Dendro teams, usually the other Dendro is a unit that is like there to deal damage, so you can put them on a damage set and him on Deepwood. Also, still not all that much of a fan of Instructor, Tenacity, Noblesse, meh. Just use Deepwood, man. Deepwood good. No, but if you're using him in a team where he's the only Dendro unit and it's not a Hyperbloom team or a Burgeon team, so you actually like don't need the Deepwood, then something like Clam can be fine. But in my opinion, it's not a big enough deal to really justify farming the set if you don't already have one. But at the end of the day, that's your decision. Let's look at teams. Cyno really likes Baizhu. There is the downside of... Okay, I really wanted to believe this, okay? I really wanted to believe this. I really wanted to believe that there was a way to make Cyno feel less bad. Not that Cyno is bad, but Cyno very often feels bad to play. I wanted to believe that the synergy was good. I tested it. The synergy is there, but I don't think it's nearly as good as I expected it to be. I was really disappointed, mainly because the defensive utility doesn't really feel like it actually does enough. I do think it can be fine when you're not against Consecrated Beasts, but with a Consecrated Beast, you still get knocked around all the time because the shield uptime is just not very high. So maybe, potentially, right, when Abysses are less just cringe, the pairing will be better. But at least in this current Abyss, I was very disappointed with how the Baizhu Cyno pairing performed. In a team like this, it can work, though, because Singso is your defensive utility, and he's very good. So I would probably move this Pog to a, like, decent. And arguably the other thing that I misjudged, in the opposite way, though, is this one. I underestimated the comfort that you get from actually getting a healer in your Hyperbloom team. Usually when I play Hyperbloom, I don't really die because the enemies die too fast, so they don't have time to kill me. But that's not the case for everyone. Obviously, I play the game a lot more than other people. I'm more familiar with enemy attack patterns because, I mean, it's my fucking job to play the game. But when I tested it with Baizhu, I could tell how much more comfortable it was. I could tell that I could afford taking a lot of damage that I would have to focus on dodging otherwise. And while it definitely was a downgrade in terms of how fast it cleared, because the team as a baseline is so strong, you can afford taking a downgrade for comfort if you need the comfort. I would probably change this to a Pog. I think he's pretty good as a Hyperbloom driver, and if you play Hyperbloom and the main issue that you have is that you die, then this might be a character that would help you out. In Burgeon teams, I stand by the no, just don't do that. Obviously, it is doable, but there's just not that much of a point to go a Burgeon team unless you're in AoE content, and if you're in AoE content, Baiju's not really applying any element in AoE, so why play him? Doesn't feel very good. Nilou, I kind of stand by the idea here, but at the end of the day, right? If you have a Baizhu that's built and you don't have a Yao Yao that's built, it's not like you're gonna struggle if you use Baizhu instead of Yao Yao. It will be a little bit worse, but it's not gonna be a big deal. And he is generally gonna build a bit more HP than Yao Yao does, which means that if you find yourself struggling with like self-damage mitigation and all that, and you find yourself dying to your own bloom damage, then he might help. I stand by the stance of like, he's not worth pulling to improve a Nilou team, but if you have him and you want to use in a Nilou team, you won't have any problems with that. It's still... Quicken teams, yeah, he's pretty decent. Doesn't feel the greatest, but it's okay. It's hard for me to judge this one, because like for me, it's not actually a problem to have to swap back to Yao Yao, or to not have that much healing without like spending time on Yao Yao. So I don't find myself having to use her burst all the time. So for me, it wouldn't be really worth doing. But again, it is pretty good. Like it's fine. He's good in Quicken teams. Good is fine. Good is fine. Good is fine. Bloom outside of Nilou, this is not a real team. We got that out of the way. Any sort of like hyper fridge or oven or saute stuff like that, it's the same thing as Hyperbloom stuff or Burgeon, right? It's just generally the reaction you keep in. Can it work? Yeah, I guess. But you'd still want to use Nahida. Yeah. Because as far as I'm aware, his burst is not 1.5 or 2 units of Dendro. It is not. It feels bad. Still need to use Nahida, so he'd be replaced. Like, yeah, just don't. Don't do that to yourself, okay? Your mental health is worth more than you think, okay? Don't waste it on that. Please, don't do that to yourself. He doesn't actually do anything for the team other than the defensive utility. And other characters have better defensive utility. Just use Daya. Just use Zhongli. Just use Daya. Just use Diona. Just use Toma. Just use fucking anyone else, please. All in all, Baizhu is looking quite good. Like, I want to make it very clear. When I compare him to Yao Yao, Yao Yao is a very good unit. So him being an upgrade over her in some teams and a downgrade over her in others, overall I'd probably put him as about as good as Yao Yao, maybe a little bit less valuable overall because he's a 5-star, so he's less accessible, which makes like your returns on investment lower if he's as good. I'd say he's generally about as good as Yao Yao with different strengths in different situations, which is good. Like, this is definitely one of the stronger units we've had since 3.0. As a support, he's a unit that's a little bit more versatile than a lot of the carries. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a better pull to get. Make sure that you're just not pulling for a unit just because you heard that they were good, like without thinking about it too much. He's far from a necessary unit to get. I might consider going for him if the 4 stars on his banners are 4 stars that I really want to get, but I didn't. I kind of understand why they made his normal attacks this bad, because otherwise there would be an argument to run him over Nahida in a lot of the like on-field Dendro teams. And while it probably wouldn't necessarily be better, it would probably feel a lot better for more casual players that don't want to learn enemies' attack patterns. I'm not looking forward to testing it. I think it's going to feel really bad to actually use him on field. As usual, right? Yeah, and like I said earlier, I was pleasantly surprised by how he feels on field. It definitely isn't as bad as isn't as cringe as I thought it would be. We're going to have to wait until his release to check how much we got right, how much we got wrong. Make sure you subscribe. I'd say that this is probably one of my most accurate pre-releases. Unfortunate on the Cyno and Hyperbloom. I give myself, I think, a 7 out of 10. But yeah, I definitely was disappointed with the Cyno synergy, and I definitely was pleasantly surprised with the Hyperbloom driver role. But all in all, just pretty solid. Nothing too crazy, nothing too terrible. Just yeah. And he is a pretty good character. He's not the kind of character that you're gonna go for and then be like, well, this character sucks. I wish I didn't get him. Unlike Kave. Sorry. I really wish I didn't go for Kave. God, he feels like shit to play. Anyways, I don't think I'll do a Kave post-release. Man. That's gonna be it for the day. Hopefully you manage to enjoy yourself if you end up going for him. Or if you don't. You know, you should be able to enjoy yourself either way. But, yeah, that's gonna be it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.